Live the Legion podcast, where we talk about the Legion of Superheroes comic book team and break subjects down so that whether you're just out of the Legion Academy or you're a longtime veteran with your own flight ring, you get to know the team a little bit better. I'm your co-host, Jim.
And I'm your co-host, Jay.
And welcome to episode 33. So last week, we kind of were messing around with the monitor board. I finally got it back together and working again, but I can't see anything on it. What's going on here, Jay?
So, well, your repair skills aren't quite as good as we thought they were, unfortunately. So if we've learned anything else, stop wrecking this stuff. Let's just get it going. Or we need to call in Brainiac 5, or we need to call in the subject of our podcast, who is also one of the greatest scientists in Legion history. We're going to talk about LYLE NORG today, Invisible Kid. As I screw up the name right from the beginning, should tell you how this episode's going to go. We have two amazing guests today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Kirby, start us off. Let us know who you are, where you're from, why people should know you.
Okay, hi. I'm Kirby, the now recent co-host of the Stop Let's Team Up podcast. I've been a Legion of Superheroes fan since I was about 18. And yep, Ross, on you.
I'm Ross Aiken. I'm the host of Stop Let's Team Up. And Kirby, I'm lucky to have met Kirby. He's joined me to run the podcast. I've been reading Legion since my brother handed me 197 right off a spinner rack. So I started with Grell and Cockrum and went from there. So I was introduced to the subject to this thing with his death, because I think I read his death before I read anything else.
Yep, and for me, my first story was Great Darkness Saga, then Superman and the Legion, and then from there I can't remember, but he was always one of the honored dead to me, because I didn't even get to 5 years later, or not 5 years later, reboot until like almost 5 years later. So it's like, oh, okay, he's just one of the dead. So when I eventually read the story, it's like, oh, okay, this is when this historical moment happens, versus like when I read Karate Kid's death in the moment, it's like, oh, that's my first death.
Yeah, I was introduced to Invisible Kid the exact same way. Like, I started just a little bit before Great Darkness Saga, and he was always the statue in the Hall of Heroes who would show up in the occasional flashback, and we'll talk about it more, and then would show up as the demon who was haunting Invisible Kid too. And we're going to get into that in this episode as well. So yeah, I mean, he's always been kind of I'm trying to think of other, like, he's always kind of been like the Bucky of the Legion, where like he's always talked about in death. He's never talked about in as a live character. Whereas I think, Jim, you have a very different take on this.
Sure. I mean, as we've talked about, I think I've talked to all three of you about this, is that the reboot Legion was my way into the Legion of Superheroes. And so at this point, it was a rebooted universe. So LYLE NORG was alive and well, and one of the early members of that particular reboot Legion, which was weird because then I would start going and getting the back issues 5 years later and the Baxter run. And of course, you have Jacques as the Invisible Kid in these issues. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? So luckily, the internet was kind of brand new at the time. So we did have that to be able to help find out what was going on.
Yeah, if only we had the internet when we were kids, because I saw no Invisible Kid stories ever. Invisible Kid, Farrelad, Chemical King were always these like, who are these people? Why should I care? Like, why is this a big deal? And then if you got some of the back issues, like I remember when I finally read, we'll talk about this more when we get to the Chemical King stuff, when I finally saw his death, and then I got back enough to see Invisible Kid's death, and it was like, oh, this is what happened. And let's just jump into it right now, because we're going to talk a lot about Invisible Kid's death, but like talk about anticlimactic from like you read all this stuff and then you actually read the story and you're like, oh, wow, this is not what I was expecting. Yeah. But let's get back. Instead of talking about his death, let's talk about his life. Let's talk about who Invisible Kid was.
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? Why is he important? Like, how did he get started? So he's actually one of the earliest Legionnaires introduced. He first appears in Action Comics 267 back in 1960, and he's actually introduced in the exact same issue as Colossal Boy and Chameleon Boy. So this is a really big trio of Legionnaires. And I mention these guys all the time. Created by Jerry Siegel, art by Jim Mooney. And I think we've said this on this podcast multiple times. These two do not get enough credit for their lasting impact on the Legion. And this just kind of shows it. He is one of the charter members of the espionage squad, understandably, as he can turn invisible. And he's always been, and please correct me if I'm wrong in this, he's always sort of been written as like the second best scientist.
Yeah, that's it's kind of retroed in later because when they're kids, they're just all kids. He is smart because it's his formula. I think that's about it. But it's really later, mostly I think in Reboot.
Reboot's really where they sell it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when he's shown as being kind of a genius, because in both cases they are very bright, the second most intelligent people on the team, most likely. Yeah, but they started getting, I did know that they started getting him into that more brainy, scientific-minded, spends all of his time in the lab towards the end of him being in the Legion. It's one of the Shooter episodes or issues after that run where he was the leader for a bit. And yeah, he's just kind of holed up in his lab doing something. I think it was the Chemoid story, actually, come to think of it. And he was working on some stuff there to try to figure out what was going on. And that became his safe place, I guess, because you never really saw him too much until they were ready to off him.
Yeah.
The wildest thing to me is in that 267, it's like he and the other centuries, they're all technically the kids of the original Legion. And then that's just completely done away with. Because it's like, do we need to make this even more complicated?
Well, it's the Legion, so yes, that tends to be true. So one thing I wanted to ask, and I don't remember, and I didn't get this when I was doing the research. Did he invent the flight rings in the original?
No.
Okay, that's
No.
Okay. In the original one. So he gets elected leader in they say year 6 of the Legion, but it's right as Jim Shooter's taking over as the writer.
Yeah, a couple issues before, isn't it?
No, it's his third issue.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like during a Dr. Regulus story with them.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. And so it's Adventure Comics 348. He gets elected. I think you could pretty safely say he's leader during the best Silver Age run of the Legion. Is that a pretty safe statement?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
There's this sweet spot from right before to when, by the time Ultra Boy's next, I think, or Monel, one of them.
Ultra Boy.
But it's the sweet spot. It is basically, it's that perfect combination of Mort Weisinger, spotty faced Jim Shooter, a lot of Kurt Swan and George Klein, which is still to me, I mean, my favorite Silver Age Legion story is the mystery Legionnaires with Surprise and Mysterious. That is absolutely a perfect Silver Age 2-parter. It's almost flawless.
He's elected leader. We have this great run where Shooter and Swan are just hitting on all cylinders. And I'm going to make my first sort of semi-controversial statement for anybody who's a big Invisible Kid fan is I think that's the reason why everybody sees him as such an important Legionnaire, because to be honest, even during this run, I don't think he's doing a lot.
No.
So I think
I would agree with that. I think why I remember him is they write him as a very good leader.
Yes.
His powers aren't there. And it's just like, and I really like it. I mean, I'm a big fan of having a chairman and having the team kind of reflect them. If it's team books being written well. And I think they use him perfectly because he's there all the time, but his power is a weird subset. You know, he's not good in a fight, really, unless he's going to walk out and push people, you know, when they can't see him, you know, but him as a strategist. And it's kind of like that Cap thing when he's written as the Avengers, or Scott Summers in the beginning of modern X-Men, is that's what he is. He's a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like it. I think he's a better, this and in Reboot, I think when he's given enough time to shine.
I think when I was going through the Silver Age stuff, I did notice that he's not being used a lot, but there is a time when he does become the leader. Like you said, Ross, it's like you get the very beginning of the story. He has his point where it says, okay, here's what's going on. He's almost like the exposition guy telling you what's going to happen. And the way they write it, though, is very good. Like you said, he comes across as a good leader when they're using him as such. It was really Jim Shooter who really liked him and wanted to kind of push him a little bit more into the forefront.
Yeah, like the Outlaw Legionnaires is a really good, I think, example of him being the leader, which I think ends with him inducting Ron Vidar as the honorary member. And this will, of course, be years before he even gets the Green Lantern ring, or officially gets it. You know, look, retcons and the way I've read the Legion, it's all jumbled in my brain.
Paul was good about sneaking new stuff in.
There was one bit though. It was at some point during the adventure where he just like smacked another Legionnaire. It's like, no, I demand total obedience from you. And
That was Ultra Boy. That was one of my favorite moments.
Yes, thank you.
That whole story, that one was so, because I read it out of order too, but mostly I was able to piece it together. They weren't as old, and to see some of that, because that run, the stories were they weren't super complex, but they were a little more. There was a little more meat to them, and it gave him a ton of shine. I liked him in that one. I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that one I wrote as a kind of a highlight item, and 351 is where he socks Joe, which I thought was just kind of fun. And then there was also the issue 343 where I think that was the Luck Lords issue is what I have down here, where he was actually using his powers, which was one of the other things that was really strange about this era, is that he's Invisible Kid and he's hardly ever invisible, at least to the point of doing something in the story.
There was a Bizarro story where Bizarro Invisible Kid shows up, but only his head can turn invisible. And I'm like, okay, that's about as much as Lyle's able to do it.
I mean, this is something I was going to bring up a little bit later, but when you really think about it, turning invisible is not a great power set to use in almost every situation that you're in. So him not turning invisible is probably the smartest thing he can do.
Well, I guess, but here's the thing. So I'm going through some of these issues, and they're in the super Stalag of space. He's the perfect guy to do a jailbreak, just using his powers in a raw way, right? Just go invisible, jump the fence, and then go get help, right? It's not hard, but he's just kind of sitting there, and eventually he gets shrunk and turns into, the boy shrinking Violet. And it's just a very strange decision from a story perspective. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's why later versions of both Lyle and Jacques will both say, like, no. He doesn't just turn invisible. He's like, you can't hear him. You can't be picked up on any other heat wave spectrum, anything like that. Just, he's a ghost, essentially.
I mean, in the 1960s, just being able to turn invisible was enough.
Oh, well, I mean, even Sue had her force fields added pretty early.
Very quickly, they go, we have to give her some other abilities or she's just hiding.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one as well, being invisible would literally be the worst thing you could be in a fight. Because just imagine you're in this, like, just take like some gigantic Legion versus Fatal 5 battle. He turns invisible and you have super powered beings flying and shooting. They can't see him. He's dead in 5 minutes because Mon-El's just going to fly right through him and he's gone. So like the worst thing he can be is invisible in a gigantic fight.
Well, right. I mean, to your point, I think even though it's great to have an invisible guy on the team in the Silver Age, folks reading comic books, they want to see action. And that's what Invisible Kid's powers are for stealth and for subterfuge and espionage. And that's probably not a great action comic right there.
It's like I'm gonna go old school video games for a bit. It's like those moments in Metal Gear Solid where you had to be stealthful and sneaky and get behind the other person. And a ton of like the younger fans are like, we just want to shoot things. We don't want to do this. And I think it's the same with this. Like, again, like, what do you do as the artist where you're like, hey, don't draw anything for 5 panels, like just draw the background or just draw something moving. I think it's also a hard power to write, which I think is why, as you mentioned, Ross, like with Invisible Woman, they had to expand her powers and they had to give her more stuff because you kind of just end up doing the same thing over and over again.
And they made her the most powerful member. So they even say it. Now she's the most powerful member of the team because she can create an invisible bubble anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what really hurt Invisible Kid as we got into the early 70s is that you had Carrie Bates going, I don't know what to do with this guy. It's also that change of fandom as well. As soon as we get into the early days of the Bronze Age, they want Timberwolf and they want Wildfire and they want big action. And there's a reason why you're not seeing a lot of espionage stories in the 70s because that's not what the readers want to see. They want big fights. And so he kind of suffers from the exact same thing that you could say that Chemical King suffers from and Duo Damsel suffers from and Bouncing Boy, whereas like we want the big powerhouses. We don't want the little, we don't want the powerless, which is why we ended up with him being a big death in the Legion of Superheroes. We talked about that. I mean, this is 1974. And Ross, as you mentioned, Mike Grell's first issue, like, welcome to the team. You're going to kill off one of the most popular.
I forgot when I was doing my read through, it got to, I was like, oh, really? Because those are some of my earliest at that Grell stuff. And then they kill Chemical King. What, he makes it 2 years, and then he's off.
Not much longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the interesting there is that Chemical King was at least on that earlier issue where they had the dead Legionnaires in the future, right? So it was kind of.
I mean, I think that's why that he got introduced in when it was in the backup in action, and it was really up and down. But he was in every issue for a while.
Yeah.
I remember reading when I finally read that, because I find that action stuff a little rough. It's everywhere. But I was like, man, Chemical King's like in every comic. And I remembered him as being, I saw him like 3 times and then they killed him.
Yeah. And that's the nicest way to describe the Action Comics run that I've seen. Rough.
Trying to not be mean. I've said harsher, but that'd be nice.
Oh, the best thing of the death of Invisible Kid issue is throughout that entire story, you keep seeing the Pharaoh Lad statue pretty prominently in the background. So I was like, this is actually some really good foreshadowing by, Bates and Grell at this. So it's like, if you're paying attention, and even if you get the idea, even if you never read that story, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. Now, the rest of that story gets really weird because you have what's her name? I wrote it down here. Myra, who is like, there's a bunch to get into where, later incarnations of LYLE will be, heavily implied, it's not outright said, to be gay, and he never had a relationship in the Silver Age, like you guys have talked about. It's like, hi, I'm a girl, I like this boy. He never had that, so it's like, we're going to give him one right as we kill him off. And then I've read the later story and we'll get there, but it's like, this is just weird. But Grell draws the heck out of it. So it's got that going for it.
Yeah, he did have that one date with Triplicate Girl, but that doesn't really count because the girls were mean then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost like with that issue, you really got the sense that they were like, we have to give Invisible Kid the happiest possible ending. And so even like the hoops they jump through to justify it. Like, I just think of like the crying Phantom Girl who's like, oh, but he's happier now. Like, he's with this ghost and you're just like, really? Like, that's where we're going with it. But I think it was just like, we don't want letters of complaint.
It's kind of like it's that bad episode of TV because you couldn't have an unhappy ending. And it's just like, why can't, I never understood it. Even as a kid, because I'd have been about 10, I was like, what? It was just a little cheesy.
It's like, just give him the death. That's kind of enough. And then you have the nice statue in the Hall of Heroes or whatever. But it was just very odd. Let's just leave it at that. And that's the last we see of him, with the exception of a couple of, ghostly appearances, shall we say.
Well, 3 issues later, before his body's even cold, Brainy cloned him and Pharaoh Lad. And again, another really weird story.
Yeah, I zipped through that. I'm like, what is this?
It's not good. And all it did was just give the beer bombs justification for SW6, but I'm not going to get my blood boiling yet.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there.
I have no evidence of this at all, but like, I'm fairly certain Cary Bates was taking whatever recreational pharmaceutical he could think of and was like, here's a great idea. Let's have clones. Here's this. And I say this not having any proof, so please don't come at me. And it's just a silly joke. But yeah, there's a lot of those episodes or a lot of those issues. Now I say episodes, Jim. You've turned me into talking about this like it's a TV show.
I know, exactly. So we don't really, this is basically kind of the last that we really see of LYLE until, oddly enough, we get into the Bronze Age or the late Bronze Age from Levitt's perspective, right? Because we see I guess we're going to call him the Dream Demon, but then we also see him in a couple of flashbacks as well.
Because there was a big bit where Wildfire and Jacques were like in a dream dimension, and it turned out like Myra wasn't actually a real ghost. I just read these like 2 days ago, and I'm like, I still don't know what's going on. And I'm convinced that the way this whole plotline originally wraps up was not the original plan. Because there's also Jacques was experiencing power fluctuation. So it's like, let's keep Jacques on the team, but let's also maybe bring LYLE back. And that doesn't happen because, again, I have no clue what the heck actually happens here.
It was one of those like one and done stories where I think they're trying to do a character moment, but it just doesn't land. I mean, it looks okay. It's Levitt and them in that run. They would do random one and dones.
Yeah.
And that's what that one felt like, but it felt a little, you're just trying to justify the ghost, and you didn't like what Carrie did, and you're undoing it.
Well, so let me ask you guys this, because you're talking about Sue Storm from a power set perspective that's invisible as their central power. Do you think in that issue with Jacques, they were kind of powering him up to have this dimensional transfer ability?
I definitely think so.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like we got him on, and I really like Jacques, but it's like it still has the same problem of like he just turns invisible. What else can we do to kind of spice it up? Because I'm trying to remember where he teleports that one guy, accidentally killing him, which led to all of that drama. So I think it's definitely the same thing of like Levitt's is like, okay, I just created this character, but I want to also not have him fall into the same pitfalls that LYLE did.
See, I actually think it's the opposite. I think he was directly saying we don't need him to be more powerful, because the end of the whole storyline is Jacques saying, I don't want this. I don't want to be more powerful. I want to be just turning invisible, because like he was essentially saying, I don't want to be more dangerous, or I don't want to be out of control. And I think this was Levitt's kind of saying like, no, this is a good enough power just by itself, and we can work with it. The whole storyline, as convoluted and confusing as it is, and that's why I think all four of us could have different takes on this, because like Kirby, I agree. I remember reading that when it came out. I remember reading it in multiple rereads, and every single time going, what the heck is happening? I think he was trying to deal with Wildfire being okay as an energy being and not being a human, and kind of having his, life thrown in his face. I think he wanted to show Jacques being okay with kind of having the weakest superpower of anybody and not expanding. And I think he wanted to fix what Carrie Bates had done. I think he's just, I don't like this, and I want to bring Invisible Kid back and show everybody how cool it is. I could be 100% wrong, because again, most of the story doesn't make any sense.
I'm a big Jacques fan. I mean, because that Levitt run, even though I've been reading it for a while, the characters are so well written, and all of a sudden I had 5 ones that I loved. Jacques, which all that group, that was the clique I was focused on. And I think he was, like Jay said, he wanted to show some growth in Wildfire, which they haven't hit. No one had done. He was still the angry guy for the most part. And just like Jay, I think is making a good point. I never thought of it as that way. That is because Jacques is also, he's the one everyone talks to in later this era of Legion. He's someone that they all can talk to, and he is always in the background doing stuff.
Yep. And I think I was just going to mention too that if I'm not mistaken, I could be merging two things in my head, but Levitt does return to this kind of weird power up capability in the retro boot, I believe. But we'll leave that for when we talk about Jacques and focus on him whenever that is. So Ross and Kirby, welcome to your first official rabbit hole on the Long Live the Legion podcast.
I've had to stop myself from going down multiple rabbit holes while doing some of the rereads for this. I'm like, no, focus on Invisible Kid. Got to focus on Invisible Kid.
I was just going to crack the bad joke of the rabbit hole is the official subtitle of this podcast.
Yeah, right. No kidding.
We just like how can we go off tangent and go crazy? So, and I'm just going to apologize to all the listeners. We have with 4 people, and we all have so many strong opinions. There's going to be a lot of talking over each other and going nuts. So it's all good.
So back to LYLE, because we're almost at the end of his, I guess, OG appearances here.
Yeah.
We get 2 more appearances that are very interesting because tying back to the Chemical Kid subject we were just talking about, or Chemical King, sorry. We see a Secret Origins and a flashback in the Baxter series issue 39, where we get a story. It does actually tie back into Jacques, right? Because Jacques sees the statue of LYLE, and then here's the story about how Chemical King came into the team. And then we also see a little bit of an inversion of the story of LYLE's death in the Secret Origins, because we see the reaction that Kondo or Chemical King had when he heard about LYLE's death. Just kind of a couple interesting appearances there from the end of that 80s era.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention really quickly the flashback where it's Sensor Girl talking to Invisible Kid, the second Invisible Kid, about her early days with the Legion and what she went through. Issue, did you say 39 or 59?
59. I'm sorry. I have in my notes, I have it V359, and I just kind of merged it together. So.
It's the joys of the brain no longer working well.
Oh yeah.
And I like, honestly, like, this is one of my favorite, like, Invisible Kid stories from OG. And you can just tell Levitz just loves writing these stories. I think it's Mark Bright who did the art. Am I right on that one?
Yes, it was Mark Bright. Yeah.
And he captures the era perfectly. It's this great, like, it's kind of like the last quiet episode before Magic Wars. Or why am I saying episode? Thanks, Jim. It's the last quiet issue. Damn you. But I think Secret Origins 47, that's the bigger, kind of longer lasting story. So who would like to tackle that one first?
Again, I think both of these issues, and Secret Origins and 59, it's like, okay, we're really kind of showing the Chemical King, Invisible Kid relationship, kind of really, like, adding more than kind of was there originally. And I always kind of feel bad because I consistently forget Chemical King ever actually existed, despite him appearing for a good bit. So I think it does some really good stuff there. And just as a story, the Secret Origins really shows how, like, one death can affect a lot of people and how it affects the people.
Yeah. I think that origin, I remember reading it. It was the one time I liked Chemical King as a character. You know, I think when he's first introduced, he has something to do, but the rest of the time you never see any of his personality.
Yeah. And it's weird too, because why is he really there when you have Element Lad on the team? Right.
Yeah. Because how is it not the exact same power set?
Right. It seems like he was just introduced into the team because they felt like they had to because of the adult Legionnaire story. And then, okay, well, got him in. Now we got to kill him off. So let's just do it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he suffers from that early 70s. Am I good enough to be a Legionnaire story, which I think they did with like 5 different Legionnaires. And it's like, maybe I should quit. I'm not strong enough to be here. And you're just like, okay, once is okay. By the time you're into it's just too much, right? Or get a different story.
Yeah.
I mean, the big one is just the not so subtle subtext that Kondo and Lyle are together romantically, and
it's interesting because that one was certainly the basis of a lot of the shipping that went on afterwards, and a lot of the fan fiction that was produced and whatnot, and some of the later decisions, which we'll get to. Mark Waid very specifically did say that there was no intent, as far as he was aware, to actually write anything like that. It was just a story because they were good friends. But as we've seen, some of our later writers take those into different directions than are originally expected.
Later writers are part of that shipping. You know what I mean? Because if you ship it long enough, and people will just write it in.
That becomes true. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's subtle. It humanizes. So I don't even know Chemical King's real name is
Kondo Arlick. Kondo Arlick is his real name.
Okay. But it's probably that's the most personality that he's given is this flashback.
Yep.
In a Secret Origin.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I felt bad reading that story. I honestly felt bad for Kondo because he's going through such a rough time here. So that was done very well. And it's just interesting how much depth they gave the character after the fact.
Yeah.
It's just that proof that, like, when a writer decides they're going to focus on one character, or they're going to bring a character up and they're going to elevate them, it doesn't matter what the character is. Like, I mean, we've all said this, like, most of us have no memories of Chemical King. And I'm even going to go, like, even for an Invisible Kid episode, like, even when I think back of his great moments in the Silver Age, I'm kind of like, well, yeah, like we've said, he's in the background. Like, he's not doing a ton. But then as soon as a writer gets their hands on the character and says, okay, let's do something, let's build, let's explore, you can do so much, right? So, like, we get probably the best Chemical King story of, not probably, the best Chemical King story of all time. I think I can say that, and I know we're gonna move into the reboot anyways. And then when we get into Reboot Legion, they very much take Invisible Kid and go, all right, he's now, like, we're moving him out of the background.
Yeah.
We are now moving him so he is front and center on this team. So did we want to move to Reboot from OG?
Well, let's just touch real quick on the SW6 one because he does come back, right? Because we had the SW6 Legion.
And I didn't want Kirby to get mad.
Yeah. we're going to do this really quickly so that Jay doesn't go on a rant. But anyway, we get Invisible Kid comes back as part of that SW6 batch. And all we can really tell you is that he was Legion leader once they started the Legionnaires title. And he gets reunited with his parents, which I think is kind of the interesting piece of this, where his parents actually thought Lyle was dead because he was killed, right, in Superboy 203. But now here's this younger version of him. And then so there's a bit of an interesting reunion there. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that's interesting about the SW6 version of the character.
Yeah. I mean, how long is that run of before 0 Hour?
18 issues.
Is it 18?
Yeah, not much.
Because I don't remember any of the adult stuff in that. I was more focused on the younger, I was like, oh, these guys will be more interesting. I know these guys.
Yeah, right, exactly. So there wasn't much, and the stories were kind of light anyway. There was that first Fatal 5 story that was their big shot out of the gate, and then not so much after that.
I just want to call out, because I always like drawing attention to this. The only good part about these Invisible Kid issues, and I'll even go to the Secret Origins one as well, is you have Chris Sprouse on the art. So he makes the character look great and the design is great. And I always have to call that out, because for those issues, I mean, it's funny when you say, like, I don't remember. I think I've tried to purge most of these stories out of my memory. But like, that artwork is enough to get me to look at the page and go, oh, this is really good. And then the moment he leaves, we'll be doing multiple episodes on 5 years later. And I know it's going to be ranting upon ranting.
All right. So get back to the reboot. So he is one of the first Legionnaires. I think they try to do the same order of the Legionnaire introduction. So I guess he's 6 officially at this point, or what is it, 8? I can't remember. But he is in line after Colossal Boy as the next member officially. But he has a very similar backstory. So in the original Silver Age scenario, he's from Earth. He's this guy who was at the university. He makes this invisibility serum. In this case, it's a very similar one. So he's the son of a pair of diplomats, and I think he gets orphaned. And then he actually goes to stay with the Focards, the Jacques family. And in this scenario, this is where he is super smart and he creates his own invisibility serum, and then he becomes a spy before he joins the actual Legion. So he has all this experience under his belt by the time he becomes a Legionnaire. And in fact, he's one of the oldest Legionnaires when he joins. He's like 16 or 17 when everybody else is about 14 years old. And this, I think, might help explain a lot of the focus that he gets throughout this run.
That story, I have as Legionnaire 66. That didn't come out for a few years, so it's definitely helped filling in a lot of the backstory. Like, we got some of it as we went along, but I don't think it was even under the original creative team. And him and Jacques as a James Bond types is like, I would read a miniseries of that.
Oh, I'd love that. Instead, we get Science Police, but that's okay. A whole other thing.
He was just too much of a perfect character in Reboot, and then making him a super spy where he can do everything. And I was just like, okay, so what does he do wrong? Like, what is he bad at? What are his failings? Because it was just, I mean, especially the first couple of years, he's just always the hero of every story. Like, he's saving them in every case, or he's the one making the right decision. I did really like the fact that he was the only one who could speak Durlan. Like, that was a nice little touch. So he and Chameleon are talking all the time. But then, like, as soon as it was revealed that Chameleon could speak English the whole time and was just playing, then you're like, okay, so what was the point of all this? Like, the two of you are just trying to trick your own teammates. That was my biggest problem with Invisible Kid in the Legion, was that he's the Gary Stu of the book. Like, he's just this perfect character. And it's like, okay, you love the original one. He's got to have some flaws. And they were quite happy giving everybody else massive flaws, and he didn't.
It makes me wonder if the creators at the time, just like we've kind of noted here, that Invisible Kid, LYLE Norg, was barely in the Silver Age, despite being a leader and despite having all these other notable appearances. He was barely there. So I'm wondering if a lot of these folks are readers from that era who wanted to kind of make up for that.
Well, I don't think it's a wonder. That's exactly what happened.
No, a lot of these people, good and bad, handled this book were former fans. And I don't have a problem with it, because some of the great comic writers were fans who got into the business.
Absolutely.
And Levitt, he had those binders that, if you've ever read interviews, that before he even wrote his first one, he'd been keeping these binders as a fan, like where the planets are. He had it all written down, but he used it to kind of flesh out the thing. But I barely remember him in the reboot.
Yeah, he was fairly front and center for a while.
Yeah, but I don't think, I haven't read it in 10, 15 years, so I think some of it is not stuck. And I liked it. I'm a fan of it. I like it as much as I like original.
I mean, they did some interesting things there. Jay, to your point, right? Yeah, he was the guy who made the flight rings in the reboot, right? So he did that. He was, I guess, the next real leader in the team. So he was the guy who, once the team split and half of them were in the past, he was the leader in the 30th century version of the team. We talk about the whole Kondo Arlick stuff in the pre-reboot, 5 years later stuff. The team writing the reboot at the time was trying to filter in this aspect of Lyle being gay, because there is a note that he gets in this one issue where he gets a note that says, "Can't wait to see you," and it's signed with the letter C. And there's a lot of speculation at the time who this was, but I think Jeff Moy, I think it was Jeff, who said on one of the AOL chats that was intended to be Kondo, or the reboot version of Chemical King, who in this version is a TV reporter for whatever reason.
I was going to say, I can't remember. Did we ever actually see Kondo on panel? Because I know, we did. Okay. Again, sorry. I've only ever read Reboot twice. It's always just from beginning to end, so it all blends.
It's like twice, maybe 3 times where it happens.
And yeah, I would have liked to have seen Kondo more, just so, again, seeing that relationship. But also, I like when the Legionnaires are dating someone who's not just in the team.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Like Gem and Chameleon Girl.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where, I mean, one of the fatal flaws of the reboot run is that they're trying so desperately to do 2 things, right? One is retell their favorite Silver Age stories, but then include every single character, whether it's warranted or not, or whether they can even, logistically do it. Like, I remember reading an interview with, I think it was Roger Stern, and he's just like, "This is too much. Like, I can't do this anymore." And McCraw and Pyre are just like, "Nope, more." And yeah, and Kondo are like, "This is a perfect one." And I agree with you. Like, that should have been a subplot. That should have been a storyline. You should have seen more of them, but they're trying to do 60 things.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that came at the time when the editor changed on the back end of the book. And there was a lot of stuff that was, I don't know, it seemed to be dropped on the floor when a lot of that stuff happened. And then, of course, ultimately we get to the point where most of that creative team gets fired, and then Abnett and Lanning come on board to do the rest of the plotting for pretty much the rest of the run. And we get a couple interesting stories there with Lyle. One is in Legion Worlds, which takes place on Brawl. I think it's the 3rd episode, or hearing that, I'm doing it again, 3rd issue. And there's this subterfuge squad, which was interesting. I don't know why they didn't just call it the Espionage Squad again, because it's basically him and Violet, and then, but also Cosmic Boy. And that was kind of an interesting discussion because, Jay, to your point earlier about him being in combat and being invisible, he was absolutely there, right, in those cases, because he was kind of given Violet directions on what to do. So that was kind of interesting. And then the only other one that really stands out to me is one of the issues where it's very early on in the run where they go back to the Kwai Galaxy, and he and Saturn Girl are kind of at odds with regards to the orphan progeny characters who were the evil minions of the progenitor / Element Lad. And it's a very interesting scene because Saturn Girl kind of comes off as a very hard line. No, they don't have any rights, but then kind of turns in her opinion, which is kind of a good moment. But it's a standout scene in my memory.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great one. And that's kind of how I think when they're using Invisible Kid the right way, like having him as kind of that, I think he's a great moral center, especially with a lot of Legion stories. And like, that's why I didn't like when they made him a spy and they made him a little bit morally gray. Like, I always think he's better as like, I'm the spirit of the Legion, right? Like, especially like you think of his leadership run in the OG, and he's that guy who's like, no, this is what the Legion is about, and this is what we do. And then when they break away from that, I think that's when they get into a little bit of trouble. And that one was perfect.
Yep. Some of my favorite bits are him and Brainy being kind of like, we're the 2 science guys, so we're really building that friendship up. Which again, to them kind of falling on their face, where it's like Brainy kisses Lyle and Legion 37.
Right.
Again, nothing's done with that, so it's like this would be again another great thing to explore. But the book is about to be unceremoniously rebooted in like 5 seconds. Which
that's a good segue into the 3-boot, because Lyle is basically our way into that world, right?
Yeah, Lyle becomes the reader surrogate for the 3-boot. So with 3-boot, a lot of the origin is the same. He's invented the serum. The difference is his dad is an SP officer who's a bit of an ass, is probably too nice of a way of saying it. Like, he is just this ultimate villain. And instead of giving the serum to the science police, he takes it himself, and then he runs off and joins the Legion. And of course, the Legion in the Three Boot is a very different concept from other legions in that it's this rebellious organization that hates anybody. I think it's over 20, right? If you're over 20, you're the bad guy. So it's like Logan's Run.
Something like that.
And
any bad science fiction movie come out in the mid 70s.
Legion's Run.
Oh, wait, are you saying Logan's Run was bad? I will argue that one.
Yeah, I
find it entertaining. I mean,
yeah, it's not a well-made movie, but it's entertaining as hell. So it's
it is. I know. I'll be honest. I read the comic first. The George Perez comic before I saw the movie. So.
Yeah, I remember as a kid because the comic didn't have the gratuitous nudity in it, and so when when that showed up in the movie, I was like, whoa! I was not expecting that in the slightest.
That's why I saw it later. My brother was like, "You cannot see this yet." Why? Yeah. No. Yeah. Not explaining that to Ma.
What are you watching?
My father had to tell her I was allowed to go see the 3 and 4 Musketeers with Raquel Welch. My mother thought that would be too much for me.
I was not allowed to watch Charlie's Angels for the exact same reason.
Oh my God.
We will do our childhood flashbacks of overprotective parents. Yeah.
My dad and mom have very different ideas of what I was and was not allowed to watch. And let me say this. I was a year ago, like I was babysitting my nephew. Oz was on TV. My dad and I were like, well, let him watch. I tried to cover my eyes when Quint was getting eaten, but the guy kept pushing my hand out of the way. He's like, come on, I want to see what's going on. And I was like, dude, even if this is where I'm like, at 2, I don't know if I should see you getting Quinty in the live.
Yeah, whereas nowadays you're like, all right, my son watches everything. And you're just like, all right, I've given up. It didn't hurt me. So there we go. That's rabbit hole number 2. So Three Boot, he introduces everybody to the team, and then he kind of disappears for a bit until
he's kind of involved in the team, and he's definitely this background cipher player because, like you said, he's the one where everybody kind of gets to learn about the team through this character, and everybody also hates him because they think he's too sneaky.
Yeah,
when I first started reading the Three Boot, which was pretty much paying attention when I had Jim convinced me to read it.
This is where you got me involved in doing all this stuff, Ross.
Sorry. Well, I'm not really sorry. But I enjoyed it more. But it was a little, when I first read it, I thought, why are they writing angsty teens? I just didn't grab me. But I liked it. But it's a little more soap opera-y on one level, especially I'm just thinking about him and it's very TV plot, all the stuff with the dad. It's like the 30th century and they're still shitty parents.
Yeah, exactly.
So we haven't changed, it's like we've not evolved, but.
Yeah. Because a lot of that drama was really around to what Jay was saying earlier was your dad's is an adult and a cop. And we hate both of those things. So you suck, and we don't trust you. And sure enough, he actually does stuff to make them not trust him further. I mean, especially Ultra Boy, but Ultra Boy's just a jerk in the whole series anyway.
Worst Ultra Boy.
But he actually does do some things, and then has this kind of cool moment when they introduce Atom Girl because she's this mythical figure for a lot of the folks, and then he blames something on her, and then she kind of enjoys that actually, which is kind of a neat little moment.
Yeah, like Karate Kid was saying, like she's just a myth. We always tell the new guys, come on, like get real. But there was a good moment where there's some battle going on between the SP and the Legion, so it's like, okay, he draws some of his blood, goes, here, Dad, here it is. Your guys will eventually be able to decode it. But what his dad doesn't know is that he also uploaded a virus that will allow the Legion to spy on the SPs.
Yeah.
Science fiction, mumbo jumbo is how that works. But hey, like this kid somehow invented an invisibility formula in the 30th century. So what you got to do?
Yeah, exactly. You have to suspend your disbelief somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, and it's that kind of Brainiac 5 Invisible Kid kind of thing where, okay, they're great scientists, so then they can do literally anything you can think of. Like, this is your solution to this problem, and we can, and like nothing is impossible for them. Like, and you just sort of go like, okay, like 1 on the team makes sense, 2, I'm going to go on a little aside. This is not really a rabbit hole, but just the
Buckle up.
Brainiac 5 Invisible Kid thing. I remember, and I don't know who to give credit to on this because it was on a Reddit post. And the person basically said the one thing that they always thought with Invisible Kid and Brainiac 5 was like Brainiac 5 was the logical brain and Invisible Kid was the creative brain. So like Brainiac 5 would be the one who would solve the problem and Invisible Kid would be the one who would come up with a new solution or a better, like something different that Brainiac 5 hadn't thought of. And I thought, especially when we talk reboot, I think that's really strong. And even in 3-boot, I think it's there as well. I mean, there's the plus, he's not a sociopath like Brainiac 5 in 3-boot, but I always like that as a difference. And I kind of I'd like to see more writers kind of lean into that, where like we talked about him inventing the flight ring. Brainiac 5 figures out the material, the new element, and LYLE comes up with, hey, here's this really cool way we can use it. And I always thought that was a great way to use these characters. I know it's a complete aside from 3-boot, but anyways, I wanted to make sure we talked.
No, it's a great point. And like you said, Brainy is very much sociopathic in this version of the Legion. And then LYLE is just kind of this guy who's there trying to find his way through. As I remember it, LYLE is sponsored into the Legion by Brainy because of the serum that he created. But then they don't really do a whole heck of a lot with that relationship for the rest of the book, as I remember.
Well, because Brainy's obsessed with Dreamgirl's ghost.
Yeah. The changing writers after Wade, I really think is kind of where a lot of that alters, because the only other real relationship I can think of was towards the Shooter era. He got like a crush on Gazelle.
Yeah.
And from what I have heard, now, if I'm totally wrong on this, I'm totally wrong. I just want to preface is originally Shooter was going to say like he was going to make a clone of Gazelle and put his brain in the clone body, essentially that he is trans. I'm like, that's a great story. That is not a story I want Jim Shooter to tell.
Honestly, that whole section of the Shooter era, I'm just like, this to me, it's like it's the WTF moment, like we were talking about before with some of the stuff. That's where it hits for me. I'm just like, I don't know what the hell this is all supposed to be.
The only good issue is the tryout issue. That's it.
Yeah, there is a little bit earlier on. I guess when Wade is still writing the 3-boot, it shows that he does have a crush on Supergirl because he tries to kind of be a blocker for Cosmic Boy. But then also he gets his arm blown off, which is kind of an interesting little development because I'm trying to remember what the exact sequence is. I think this is in the Wanderer story, but the flight rings have been hacked, basically, I think, by the Dominators. And so he flies up using the flight ring and it explodes, blowing his arm off. And then so he has to go around for a couple of issues with this fake alien arm that some kind of a Groot type of character grew for him. It's something weird like that. But yeah.
So I was going to say, Kirby, having this out of your memory is actually probably the best way to handle this part of this story.
I never got through it. It was I had been getting it, and I read through, and I got it's Shooter. Let's see what he does, and it's like looking at a violent car accident. It's just blood and body parts everywhere. None of it makes any sense. You don't know what. And it's just like, I don't even know who these characters are, but they're not the ones they're saying they are.
Yeah. I mean, because Ross, when we did your show, that was the first couple of the trades for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first couple of years or something like that.
Yeah, but we didn't get to that. But
yeah, but you're right. Those characters were totally different characters in the Shooter time frame.
Yeah. I just didn't understand what they were going for.
Yeah.
But I could use that sentence to describe the entire 3-boot run. Those aren't the characters that they're supposed to be, and I don't understand what they were going for, right?
I will say
but I get your point.
With 3-boot, I enjoyed it, reading it. I liked this, especially when Supergirl got into it. I think it was a little more lighter. But they're not the same characters. Like, I'm an Element Lad fan, but that ends with the reboot. That's it, because the other Jans are not. That's not Element Lad in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
God, the last one. I mean, Ryan Sook basically reinvented Brotherhood the Geek and said that was Element Lad. I was like, please don't use him. I don't want to be traumatized anymore.
Right.
By this crappy version of him, but his 3-boot version, it's all kind of mystic. Like he looks like he's dressed like a wizard. He's an alchemist.
Something like that.
It was that's what they call him, the alchemist. Like, that's so stupid.
I'm so glad I read 3-boot once over the course of a weekend, and just you can, if you want to dig through the Legion Discord, you can find my slow mental breakdown reading.
Oh God.
Oh, those are good. Those are good reads.
I'm Jay, with your going through the retro reboot, it's like, man, I need to do that eventually, but I don't want to for so many different reasons.
Well, I mean, every one of these rereads that I do, like, it's funny when you mention, like, you can see my slow, gradual, decline during 3-boot. And it's the same, like, if you go through my reread on 3-boot, I'm trying my damnedest to find something positive. And normally it's like, like we're talking about the Jim Shooter stuff. Like, it's Francis Manipul. Like, at least it looks good. The art is amazing. But Ross, like, your point is exactly right. Like, who are these people? What are they doing? And then the fact that they canceled it halfway through Shooter's big 14-issue conclusion. And so you get to issue 50 and you're just like, what the crap? I mean, and I will say this, I will actually defend, since, I'm going to drag this back to an Invisible Kid podcast.
Why?
I actually kind of liked how Shooter made him, like, so insecure and like, oh, I've got to create a new body in this new world because I have to impress this girl. And I was like, that's actually not a bad take on this. Like, here's a guy who, especially in 3-boot, like, yeah, everybody's been treating him like crap the entire time. He's, arguably the weakest power-wise, and he's trying to impress this girl. And he just doesn't have the self-confidence. And I'm like, okay, there's a great story to tell. Again, I don't know if Jim Shooter's the best person to tell this story, but at least he's trying to do something different with this guy. And especially, like, there were so many characters in 3-boot that I wanted to see their personalities change anyways. So I wasn't too sad when they changed. Like, I mean, I didn't need to see what they did with Saturn Girl, but, like, it's...
We're also looking at how comics have changed because because there's less of the water cooler moments. It's more about who's drawing it. It's the beginning of the decompression of comics.
No, for sure.
Wade can only decompress so much.
Yeah.
But he fails sometimes, I think. I do not think this is his strongest work. I don't know why. Yeah. My biggest thing with 3-boot is they wanted to do angsty, like, anti-authority kids, and you're all in your 40s or late 30s. It just kind of, as a kid would say, cringe right now. They're not like the 60s generation or whatever. They're those kids. I just don't know what they were going for, and it just read a little off. And I think when they bring in Supergirl, at least let's make it fun.
Yeah.
That she's not going to be heavy. She's like, hey, I'm just here to do stuff,
Yeah. Oh, that's an awesome point, Ross. I mean, I have similar feelings, and I think you just kind of really articulated them well, because you're reading this, and let's be honest, that whole anti-authority shtick was only used when it made sense for them to use it in the story. Other times it just kind of got forgotten about and put on the back burner. But the other thing too was that, let's also be honest, most of the people reading this were adults, not kids.
Yes. Exactly.
If you're an adult reading this and you see a bunch of punk ass kids rebelling against authority, I'm just like,
whatever.
Let's reel it in here a little bit.
Yeah, it's a point. There's this thing with fandom is, I think it's a little better now because the kids around this time who were more interested in manga than American comics, because you've seen that the kind of overlap, the tastes have changed. So everybody does a little bit of everything. But you also have younger people writing again. But it's like, I'm 61. I would not, if someone said, would you really write Legion? It's like, God, no. Why would you ask go get someone who's 25 and got some fresh ideas? But yeah, it was weird. I never thought it would get any weirder than that.
But you were wrong.
When we get to that point.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, it's funny when you said, like, to call back earlier in the podcast, we were saying, like, most of the Legion writers have been fans in the first place. And then that's when they come on this. And I think sometimes the fan in them hurts what they do. And I think Mark Waid is the perfect example of this. Like, he's as good as he is. I think his biggest failings have always been the Legion, which seems to be the book he is most in love with.
Yeah.
And you kind of go like, you almost say, like, I want somebody who's a fan, but not like the diehard. But then Levitz was the diehard fan, and it worked 2 out of 3 times. So, I mean, who knows, right?
And I think it helps. Like, Levitz was primarily an editor by the time when he came back, and he was giving himself his job, and he made it one of the top 3 teen books. I mean, it was as popular as Titans and X-Men all at the same time. and then Burns FF somewhere around there. So it was, but Levitz knew how to edit. And he was also, I think after him, and even with Giffen, it was less about personalities and more about bells and whistles. And then the decompression, I think, because Wade does fanboy stuff all the time and it's excellent. But when he misses, he misses. And I think with this one, it was like you could have just gone back with and made them that the optimistic kid rebels, like you would, you know what I mean? Because the Legionnaires were always pretty optimistic. We see the bigger picture. We're out to do good. We don't want to do harm. And I just think he misses it. He missed it.
Let's had Karen Berger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of her strengths was like, she knew nothing about the Legion when she was editing the book. So she's like, I don't care about any of this past. These stories have to work. They have to make sense. They have to be like they have to work for me, not knowing, at the time, 25, 30 years of history. And I think when the Legion starts to fail, it's when the entire team is like so steeped in Legion history that they go, and again, they'll take a character like Invisible Kid and say, everybody loves this guy because I love him. And it's like, no, like that's not how this works.
Yeah.
You need to give us a reason. You need to give the new audience a reason to love them, right? Like it's not that easy.
Yeah.
You've got to put in some work.
Well, I don't think you have editors like that anymore, because you bring that up as Levitz never made himself editor of his own book. He let Roy do it. Yeah. He let Marv do it. He let, and he would hire people like Tom Carlin, and he created the idea of a line editor. These are your 5 books. And Karen Berger is one of the best comic editors ever. I mean, because she would tidy up messes and you could, it was all solid. Yeah. Even the misses were entertaining. You know what I mean? He's good 2 out of 3 times. That's a good analogy for Paul. Because every 2 out of 3 stories are, wow, it's a masterpiece. Well, that was a little disappointing. But it's still entertaining. And there's still stuff going on with the characters.
Yeah. It's readable. It's a very readable story.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to kind of add on that, like, speaking of, like, the fan, like, Paul comes in, especially in those first 2 runs, as, like, I am a writer first and a fan second. Like, whereas, kind of after Paul's second run, and, it's like, we're coming in with, like, all our fan ideas first. And we're not, we haven't, I'll just say it, Beer Bomb's not professional writers, and they should not have been given the keys to the kingdom on their first go. Give them a mini series on some other title to prove that we can tell beginning, middle, end. They didn't. It shows. Moving on. Again, if you guys ever need a bad guy for 5 years later, I'll be your bad guy.
No. I'm already the bad guy on 5 years later. Yes. We need somebody who can defend it. I
haven't read it in a long time, but I remember liking the first half and I remember when it jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Issue 3.
The first 24 issues are amazing, and then there's a slow decline, and then the moment Giffen leaves, it is car off a cliff. It is a train wreck. Like it is like
it was like, I'm not. Yeah. Hey, by the way, all the stuff I was going to do, I deleted it from my computer. Have a nice day. Because I could see, from what I've read about Giffen's personality, I could see him going, delete? Here's my badge. Let security walk me out the door.
So are we bound to retro boot now with LYLE?
So this is where I wanted to ask you guys about from a LYLE NORG perspective. Was there anything, A, in the retro boot, since in the retro boot he'd be dead? And then B, is there anything in Bendis? I don't think he's even in Bendis, because I know there's an Invisible Kid, but I have no idea who it is.
Well, he's one of the many characters that Bendis did squat with. I mean, they made the big mistake is start with the team established. And no, the good thing about the reboot, even though they did it quick, they started with 5 or 6. By the end of a year, you had 20. But you saw the logic in there. This is a new institution we're building.
I know that they gave him some dialogue because they referred to him as the Invisible Gentleman, but I just assumed that was Jacques.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I've never read all the retro. I mean, I bought them all and I've gone through them, but I've never read it because it was all, I mean, I've started to, but it really was all over the place. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, as I'm in middle of the retro boot, he hasn't shown up in any of the stuff I've read, and I don't think he does because I think he's dead in this version.
Yeah, because they're basically saying everything from what happens after the Magic War, something else happened.
Right.
5 years later, it was erased with zero out.
Exactly.
No. So there is in Legion Annual 1, the one where Giffen comes back and they reintroduce the Emerald Empress and then waste every good concept they have. There is a timeline at the very end of it.
Oh, yeah, the board game timeline. Yeah,
the board game timeline. And it does say LYLE NORG dies or Validus kills him. So that's still part of Retribute.
Okay, but
continuity.
but
so
I'm just saying, so basically in Retro, nothing from the Magic Wars on
right
happened.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
There's no
and
5 years
only
later.
appeared in the footnote.
Yeah.
No 5 years later. See, and I like that. I like that idea. It's like, just go back to the one of the two that really worked. Because I mean, Legion,
again,
the reboot sold a lot of comics.
Yeah, it ran for 11 years.
Reboot?
Yeah.
Sadly, well, I mean, the problem is that by the time again, we're completely off topic, but who cares? By the time 5 years later ended, they had successfully pissed off so many Legion fans that I don't know if there was anything Reboot could have done that would have gotten them back. And I also think, and so like when we talk about, Reboot sold a bunch of comics, if you look at the numbers, like kind of didn't. Like it was just this solid C-level book that, that DC didn't really push that far. And if they ever tried, it was kind of half-baked when they did it. And I think DC was just happy, like, hey, we got these two books. They sell about 25,000 copies a month, which at the time put them solidly like in the same level, like barely beating a lot of Vertigo books. And so I think that's one of the reasons why so many people don't go back to it. Like it has its diehard fans, and there's the people who read it who go, yeah, like this is a really good run. Like, yeah, there's ups and downs and there's high points and low points. And the last couple of years of Pyre and Stern, I think are like, they should have left the book far before they did. But I think it's more viewed as this, like, like it's not the real Legion for a variety of reasons. And then DC looks at it and goes, this was kind of objectively a failure. We got Legion Lost out of it. And so that's about the only one that they really want to push.
Because it's sold because it's the one of his.
But here's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
It actually didn't.
Yeah,
like you look at the sales numbers and it actually did not sell as well as people think it did. It just did better, but not dramatically. Like by the time Legion Lost came out, I hate to say this, I've spent way too much time looking at sales numbers. It did not sell as well as most people think it sold.
Wow. I walked, and then also I had to say this, I was working in and out of comic shops, and I worked for Jeppy from Diamond. I ran a couple of his stores. And the 80s was a weird thing, but we all talk about publishing numbers is people are really surprised how low to be successful you have to be nowadays, because it used to be tens of millions, and it's now really, if you get 100,000, you're a solid hit. And so the Absolute line selling like crazy, they're going, what the hell? It's like, because Marvel's not doing anything good.
Yeah. Well, think about mid 80s. Right?
Yeah.
Marvel had that edict. If you're under 100,000 in sales, you're going to get canceled. So like one book that I always reference because it's one of my favorites of the time, Master of Kung Fu, gets canceled because it drops under 100,000 and its sales were better than 80% of DC's line at the time. And Marvel's like, nope, done. And it's gone. And you're like, what? Whereas now, like if you have 100,000 in sales, you are one of the biggest books out there.
Even the Legion's numbers in the 90s, it's like, oh, those are numbers they would kill for nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
For Legion Lost, it's just, I think the problem is it gets lionized so much because it's very hard. It's so soap opera issue to issue that there's no clear arcs to collect and have that trade paperback. Like, I mean, they're only kind of now course correcting on that, but even then, it's not perfect because we've only had those two Legionnaires trades and that's it, unfortunately. It's like,
it's a weird thing that they do with publish. I do not know why the blind spots for reprinting, especially right now where they're doing a lot of reprinting. No, there's more. I think there's more money and more shops are going to more collections and floppies.
Yeah. Well, we made the case when Paul Kaminsky was on the podcast of like, why have you not reprinted, like, for example, the beginning of the Legion with all of the Olivier Coipel work? How is that not out in a trade when he's one of the biggest names in comics and you have, 18 issues of his work that's just sitting there and nobody's reprinting it? And it's like, but they're like, that's Reboot Legion. Like, we don't, like, we've just kind of put it to the sideline there. So
it's so narrow-minded because if you're looking at what DC's doing with the DC Finest, they've given you multiple ways to read everything. I think they've gotten the model, and their price points are cheaper. But that'd be a good thing to. Come on, man! They reprinted some stuff that just the Blue Beetle one.
Yeah.
The first 6 Dan Garrett Blue Beetles in that are the worst comics I've ever read. And I've read Chuck Schick comics, but the Texas Crazy Baptist comic book. They're so bad. I made a comment about the artist, and I thought my brother was going to correct me. And I went, because he likes that era of comics, I thought he was going to say, don't make fun of him. And I went, how bad is it? And he goes, oh, it's shit. But they're printing that. It makes no sense.
Well, when we talk about revisiting old eras, we definitely want to bring in and mention the 0 Hour anniversary that was released just a few years ago, just because that has LYLE NORG in it. To the topic of who we're talking about today. Out of all people, all Legionnaires, they have LYLE in this thing for some weird reason.
Yeah, so I think it's a case of he's one of Jurgen's favorite Legionnaires, I think. Because I think it's Jurgen's drawing them. It's it's the best that original is ever going to look. Because we haven't really talked costume wise, but it's LYLE's original. It's brown and orange. It's ugly
With a headband.
And it's what are you doing? But he made them work. Because again, I'm going to go with the assumption. It's I want to have a Legionnaire. I don't want to be brainy for whatever reason. So I'll make it the next science guy. Cool. Invisible Kid. I'm going to throw him into the Legion at a point where there's no other Legion comics being published. So I'm going to put them in where I put them in.
yeah, good call on the costume. We haven't gotten to that yet because I didn't want to go down that road of.
It's very early 60s.
Yeah.
Future clothes. Because a lot of times, remember when the first few years, you would only see the 3 big or 4 big, and you'd have all these people in these bland. One of the villains has got spiky white fins and just. Bad 60s science fiction spacesuits. Why do you have these big, giant, puffy sleeves?
And he didn't even get a chance to get a Grell redesign.
Or Cockrum. You would think Cockrum would have. Yeah. Well, I think Cockrum, I think it's who draws it. I think it looks, some people draw it better. Alan Davis, when he does him.
Oh, yeah.
It looks really good. It works.
Everything he does is great.
Yeah, but you look at that costume and it's full 70s and the great color and it's just, you realize it's that, hey, we got a month to put out a comic, give us 3 new superheroes. And so it's all right, Chameleon Boy gets ears and this guy gets a headband, and there's not that kind of thought going into it. And then when he gets into Reboot, he gets a better look, at least it's a better design. But I do like the fact they kept the headband. It's just, all right, this is who he is. And
it never connected to me until they started doing the monitor board when Broderick and Giffen were the artists.
Yeah,
right.
That thing up his shirt is the letter I.
Yeah.
I was I just thought it was just bad choices in decoration. Oh shit, that's the letter I. And it doesn't change when they go to Interlac. So
right.
Yeah, it's a great moment with Element Lad where you have to explain that's an E. And then
that took me so long when I was going through. I'm okay, once they started learning how to translate Interlac in my brain, I'm now that makes more sense. Okay. Yes, they even kept
we all went through that. Why does he have that on? What is that? Yeah, it was a much more obvious I in Reboot. But yeah, that it's kind of been a tough thing with Invisible Kid. He never got that 70s redesign, and he never got that 80s. I think Giffen would have had a blast redoing his costume as well. He never got any of those. So he, that's kind of, I think, what's hurt him moving forward, right? Even if he'd had a horrible Grell redesign, at least people would have kept talking about him. What's worse, Colossal Boy or Invisible Kid? But he never got that one. He just got that, he just gets that 60s look. And so Jacques gets you can argue whether it's a better costume or not, but at least it's more dynamic on the page, right?
Yeah.
And he got the rogue hairstyle. So it's you get the white stripe. So,
well, I'll be thankful because it could have been a new Cosmic Boy costume in the 70s.
Yeah. I never realized that he's just wearing a bustier.
Sounding.
Well, I was going to say, this is one of the interesting things about the Retro Boot reread is Gravity Lad has the same kind of costume that Cosmic Boy had in the 70s.
Yeah,
It just clicked like last week. I was reading this. I'm like, oh, this is the exact same thing. Like, holy, okay, Phil Jimenez, like bold choice on this one. Like, but again, that's kind of a Legion tradition, and I think sometimes positive. Like, I think it's great when you get teenagers in bad clothing because teenager style can suck often,
absolutely.
and it's like, let's do something horrible.
Yeah, I mean, Saturn Girls never made any sense to me. It's like, why would you fight in a bikini?
Oh, right. Yeah. It was total cheesecake for sure.
Oh, no, that was
That's
Dave.
why it makes sense. Well, Saturn Girl, Shadowlass, like it's just, why would you do this? But then it's the same like the Red Sonja thing. Like, why would you fight in a chainmail bikini? Like, because it's 14-year-old boys who are buying these stories. Like, it's pretty simple, and we're simple people, right? Like, it's not that hard.
So we have a new Legion series coming. It looks like sometime in the August to September timeframe, as we were talking today. Do you think we should have an Invisible Kid? We haven't seen one. Not that we, maybe not just because of the virtue of his powers, but we have not seen an Invisible Kid from the Omega Legion, from Darkseid's Legion. Should we see one for this new thing that we're getting this year?
I'd like to see some version of him. He's I'm a Jacques guy, so I'm going to be blunt if I want Jacques. But I think it's a good power to have, and you could just, alter it a little bit to make it a little, or you're going to have members like him and Chameleon Boy and Shrinking Violet. They don't go into the battles. They're the guys that go ahead of the battle and get stuff ready. Because when they're used properly, that works real well. I think Levitz and Giffen did well with it. I think, who did the stuff in Tales of the Legion?
I think that was
Levitz.
Jurgens drawing some of that.
Jurgens and Shoemaker.
Yeah, Jurgens was just getting big over there. So so they did a lot of that. They were in that book a bit when the two were running simultaneously, and it made sense. And it gives you a chance. And what I like about Legion being written well is that every issue could have a different lineup. And the good runs had, which I like to call the water cooler moments, that you get to see what's going on with these characters as people. That's what I want to see, because I don't see that in a lot of comics at all. I don't know. I trust Williamson. Most of everything I've read of his has been steady, some of it better than others, but always entertaining. He did a short run on Green Arrow, and he just leaned heavy into the Arrow family, and I liked it because you got to see them interacting as a family and talking about real issues while in between beating up bad guys.
Certainly in the Superman work that he's doing, you see that, right? With the down moments, right? Well,
and it's always, me and Kirby have been talking about it, and I am a late reader of Peter Tomasi, but his Superman was exceptional, and it was mostly about Clark, Lois, and young Jonathan, who's coming back.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, wait a minute, this is on, and got real stuff going on. So that's what I'd like to see. I would really like to see good. There are not many. I don't think as somebody who loves team books, I don't think there are a lot out there right now. I mean, I had my shop stop pulling all Marvel.
Yeah.
I went, no, nothing. I'll read it on the app. I'm not paying money. It's rough because it's a lot of people flying, punching guys. And sometimes that's not in their power set and they're doing it. It's really rough. So I would just like to see it and have someone like Lyle have that kind of softer character.
What say you?
Yeah, so I would say if I have feet to the fire, I know this is a Lyle episode, but I'm also a Jacques guy. But I think the thing to take from Lyle, whether it's Lyle himself or another character, is have that character to bounce stuff off of Brainy, where, it's him and Brainy, they're talking, going all science, and then Lyle has to then translate from Brainy to everyone else. It's like, okay, here's how this is what he's talking about. This is the practical use of it. Have it be a theoretical scientist versus an engineer type deal. Like, that's kind of what I would say would be your biggest takeaway from Lyle. Obviously, you also include stuff from, the espionage squad, all of that. And yeah, you can have the more soft character. Not every character needs to be Ultra Boy and Wildfire just going and smashing, because that gets boring when it's just those characters. And that's kind of where Lyle at his best, shines as, okay, I'm not the flashiest powers, but here's what I do. Here's how I contribute to the team.
I like that. So it's kind of funny. I feel like I'm just going to copy everybody by saying I'm a Jacques guy as well. But I will say this. I think, because we all got into this series when Lyle was already dead, so he became sort of that statue and that memory. If that's the way they want to go with him and they use him as this is why this world is dangerous and this is why we have to be careful. And this is they use that as sort of a springboard to talk about the past, then I'm cool with that. If they're going to use Lyle in the series, I would actually like to see them. Do you remember in the Legion when they built Legion World and you had Triad running the whole show and you had, I think it was Gear doing all the technical. And I think if you said we're going to have a team that runs the home, and you put Invisible Kid in the lab, and Kirby, awesome idea to have him in Brainiac 5. I think the other cool part is that might humanize Brainiac 5 and we'll stop having Brainiac 5's a jackass stories, which drive me nuts.
I'm so done with those.
He should be everybody's friend. And this is a way to kind of show that he's not just a jerk. That's how I'd kind of want to see them. And then, like we said, bring him out in the espionage squad and have hey, we've got to go investigate blah, blah, blah. Because that's another thing that I think the Legion writers have missed so much. When's the last Chameleon Boy as detective story that you remember, which is something they should be doing? Or when's the last, so I want to see them use all of their skills. So let's see if we're going to have Invisible Kid, use him to the best that we can use him, or use him as this is our past. And maybe you could have somebody as the leader going, I wish I was as good of a leader as Invisible Kid was. And that's driving them to learn from the mistakes. And you can do those sort of flashbacks. I will say this, and I know this is going to go against what Ross just said. I'm really digging the Fantastic Four series coming out of Marvel, and the way they're writing it so science heavy is how I would want to see them writing Brainiac 5 and Invisible Kid if they're doing it. Because it's not just punch, punch, kick, kick. It's, hey, we got a problem. Let's actually use science to figure this out. Ryan North is doing an amazing job making it feel like the Fantastic Four, and they're not just beating people up.
He remembers that the thing is an actual scientist.
Yeah, and it's that's how I would want to see them used, because there's that one issue where the aliens have come down and the only person who knows there's aliens is Alicia Masters because she's blind.
Yes.
And the aliens are messing with everybody else. And it's literally Reed taking one clue and figuring out. Spoiler if you haven't read this. It's one of the best Fantastic Four stories, because not only is it the Fantastic Four family, but it's only brain power. It's not, there's no fights. It's just, let's outthink this problem. And if they do that with Invisible Kid, I will be ecstatically happy, because it means they got the character. And that's all I want. I think, Ross, you said it. I think Josh Williamson gets the characters. Or at least that's, fingers crossed that's
based on what we've seen with the, I guess, Superman 29, it seems like he has. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what Superman builds in the future with how he's going to save everything. So.
All right, Jim, what do you think? How do you want the character handled?
So, I mean, I love everything that you guys have said here. I love, Ross, I love your idea of having this Legion advanced team to go in and doing recon. And I think, that's the exact right spot for the espionage squad, right? To go in before they go in guns blazing, even though they could, and just beat the crap out of everything. But this way you get to use the entire team, and maybe they get into a little bit of interesting problems on their own that they have to encounter.
Levitt said that he always had that Chameleon Boy could do whatever he wanted. Remember? Yeah, Chameleon Boy goes, no, I'm the head of the espionage squad.
Yeah.
That's my call.
Yep.
Because he takes over. I think they mention it somewhere that it used to be Lyle.
When he did that with when Cam did that, and they went to Kundia because he was on that whole snit of learning that he was RJ's son. So he made that call and caused a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, I think it's a great call. I love the idea of them being kind of him and Brainy being these partners in the lab for those kind of things, or running the ship, as it were. I think we're probably going 4 for 4 here, in that I would probably prefer a Jacques Invisible Kid versus a Lyle one. And that's partly for 2 reasons, because I think, one is actually diversity. I love having a Legion that's a little bit more of a white boys club, and so to have a little more diversity makes a lot of sense. Although, if they decide to lean into, less binary sexuality concepts in this new Legion. You could have a gay Lyle be part of that too. So, but I don't know. Again, that's a DC question of how far they're willing to kind of push that kind of thing. But I would probably prefer a Jacques Invisible Kid, but I would like an Invisible Kid 100%, one way or another on this new team.
Because, I mean, Levitt's creating Jacques early on in his second run, so you knew it was something he wanted to do before.
Yeah.
And that annual is that's the only Legion comic I still own.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's one, because it was that point when I was reading it, I was like, these backups are really good.
Yeah.
I love Pat Proctor because he drew Captain Marvel. I went, oh, good. Him doing space stuff. That's what he should be doing. And then Giffen coming in, and I'm like going, wow. Because he hadn't really done anything as a major. I mean, I liked his runs, his Challenger Unknown and his Defenders, short runs, and some other stuff. So this was really his first. I was like, oh, they're going to give him a book. And it was just, wait a minute. Why wasn't this book like this the last 5 years?
It was one of the best annuals ever written.
Yeah. And it was brought in Caputo. It was fan service, but, because Jacques had some character. He had some of that tragic stuff a superhero needs, without it being too much.
It is kind of funny, like when you say how like Giffen had done nothing before he joined the Legion, and I agree, but yet every time you watch a Marvel movie, it's always like Rocket Raccoon, created by, I think it's Bill Mantlo and Keith Giffen. Like I always forget that he was involved, and he was the first one who did it. And you're like that's probably the character he's going to be most known for. Where I don't even think he would talk about this as like a big deal. It is so funny, but it's funny like you mentioned that. Yeah, like Giffen came in, nobody had a clue who he was. I remember reading like he had left, I believe I'm right, he'd left Marvel under less than auspicious circumstances, so he wasn't even too sure if he was going to get a job again. And DC's like, hey, come on, do this. And he's like, I'm in. And it starts this decades-long run where he's one of the most important creators at DC.
And then he goes back to Marvel and reinvents their space stuff.
Yeah.
Which is cosmic stuff. Yeah, because his art was, his Marvel art in his early 70s art. I mean, his Guardians, his Challengers is beautiful, but it's a little more Craig P. Russell and Kirby, but his Defenders is still one of my favorite runs of his. It's just beautiful. It was just pretty.
All right. I think we have said everything that we can possibly say about Invisible Kid. And we probably said more than most of the creators have ever said about Invisible Kid.
Yeah. We got a lot more than I thought we were going to get, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, I think he's a character that people have fond feel. I mean, I loved going back and discovering when he was good, but it was like, oh, he's just the leader. Okay, he's a really good leader.
Yeah,
yeah, and also it was nice to see when someone writes a leader, because after that, it's not until Jerry Conway comes on that it matters who the leader is. It's just some fan election, and then you don't even see him in an issue. You don't see Ultra Boy's at leader for like a year, and he's only in 3 comics.
To me, the funniest one of all the elections in the 70s is when Wildfire gets elected leader, and the writer just does not want to do anything with him.
Yeah.
Because they're like, he is not a leader. Like his character does not exist. And you're like, why would he do this? And it's so funny because he basically exists as leader for him to tell everybody else they're wrong. Like, okay,
and what she acts is in the Superboy 250, 251, where it's like clearly written while he was leader, because you are taking, it's one of my favorite stories. So it's like, where was this when you were actually leader?
Yeah. And so then you get the lightning lad of like, I don't really want to do this, and this is making my life worse. It's like, okay, that's an interesting take on the leadership. But yeah, Ross, you're right.
Because he's the write-in candidate or something. It's like, well, I like it. It's like, they didn't get to choose, like Dream Girl. I wonder what Levitz thought when that happened. What the?
Yeah.
Well, but he was also bringing it, but see, Levitz everybody got someone in the spotlight. Everybody got their story.
Exactly.
Well, I've said this a few times, and it's like the one thing I always give Levitz credit for his first 2 runs, the third run I don't think works quite as well, is if you were to ask me who's your favorite Legionnaire or who is Levitz's favorite Legionnaire, I couldn't tell you. Like if you read that volume 2, volume 3, I have no idea like who he likes. Like when I found out like Karate Kid was one of his favorites, I was just stunned because he was the one who killed him, right?
It's a really good
Whereas like if you say, who's Keith Giffen's favorite Legionnaire? I know immediately. Or who are the beer bomb's favorite Legionnaire? I know immediately. And I think that's one of those things where one of the strengths of Levitz is, yeah, everybody gets their time. You don't know. And the Dream Girl thing is a perfect example. I guarantee you they did not want her as leader for the Great Darkness saga, but it's like, all right, we got this shoved. Like, we have to do this.
But she's perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm an Element Lad guy. You knew who the fans liked, and like Element Lad doesn't get any love in the early 60s and stuff. He'll show up when they need him to do something, but the fans kind of pulled him to the front because he's always the runner-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they turned that into a joke. I didn't win. Come on, I never win these things.
Yeah.
I'm not the leader. But yeah, well, that was the funny one about Retro, like doing that reread, is they just had the election and Mon-El gets elected. And you know that they did not want Mon-El to be the leader of the team because they already gave him the Green Lantern ring and he's off doing other stuff. And I put this in the reread column, like Earthman finished 3rd and Gates finished 5th. And you know it's Gates, like the Gates votes are all the reboot fans going, hey, can you use our characters once? And the Earthman, I'm just assuming it's over 1,000 readers who want to burn the title down. And they're just like, okay, let's do the dumbest thing.
Yeah, I hate this, so let's make him leader and let's see if they can put up more.
Yeah, and it's like, wow. And so, and you just know, like, and I think they even say in the letters column, like, we didn't know what we were going to do if Earthman won, but it was close. Like, it was there. And I mean, that's kind of what I miss. Like, I love those moments where the writers don't like, okay, we got to change our plans. We got to do something different.
I voted in the last 4 or 5 of them. So the first time Element Lad won one, I voted in. That was the first one I voted in. Because in that era, when they're not just sure who's going to be the main artist, because I think they were doing tryouts. You do the backup, you do the lead, it's how to, and to get it out on time,
Yeah. I always thought it was Broderick. Broderick was the initial choice. And then he realized very early on, this was
a lot.
And so then he goes to Firestorm, which is just not a criticism of Firestorm, just an easier book to draw. And I think Giffen was like, give me the lead, give me the lead, give me the lead.
And it's great because I think Broderick's Firestorm I love it. I'm a big fan of Broderick. He could do, and he took over Micronauts, and I loved it. His Captain Marvel was amazing.
Captain Adam's top tier.
Captain Adam.
Oh, I forgot he did Captain Adam. That's a great character for him.
Yeah, he's a great artist that nobody talks about anymore. There's those guys from the 80s or 70s, 80s, and 90s that didn't have that one book that propels them into like, and you don't see the trades coming out. Like you're not going to see, like with Micronauts, like everybody remembers Michael Golden. Nobody talks about when Broderick took over and the book still maintained what it was doing.
He only did 12.
Yeah.
He only did the first 12. The book ran for 100 issues. And even didn't end up being Steve Ditko. There were only 3 pencilers on. Oh no, Jackson. He did some, and Jackson Geist did some.
Jackson Geist, yeah. I always think of Ditko did that long ROM run, right? Yeah.
ROM was Sal and Ditko.
Yeah.
But the 2 main things about both books, they're both Mantlo. That's why they were so good. Mantlo would be like Wade today if he had written. I think he could have been, someone you come in to have fixed stuff.
Mantlo doesn't get enough credit for taking on books that I think nobody else wanted to do. Like, just imagine, here's a toy line, go nuts. And it's like, and he gets it twice, and he delivers in both cases where he makes these books work really, really well. And I don't know if a lot of writers could have done that. Like, just that.
Hulk was dying. And it was
although I hated what he did on Alpha Flight. I'm just going to go with that.
His Alpha
Flight? When he went to Alpha Flight.
I have it. I have not read all of it.
It might have been just because he was post-Burn, and like Burn at the time, like it's Burn. You can't, I don't know how you follow him.
Yeah, but his Burn's Alpha Flight is not as interesting as the next Bill Mantlo's, I think. Yeah. Because I've read enough of the Mantlo to say, yes, this is better than the Burn stuff. It's a little more interesting.
Okay.
So
I always liked the Burn stuff better. So it just felt, I think, but it's, again, that's why personal taste comes into this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Oh, I'm a big Burn fan. I actually ordered that Elsewhen Volume 1 because his X-Men is really that his and up through Cockrum 2, or that's all the X-Men I ever.
Well, I'd stick with the Paul Smith. I love that stuff
Paul
too.
Smith. I'm going to give, and I don't mind the beginning of the JR Jr. It's just at that point I was like broke in college. I said, I'll give up. Okay.
I go to issue 200 And then
Yes,
I'm like,
sir.
okay, that's good. That's all I
Yeah.
need. I'm cool. So it's, I covered, like 3 of the best artists to ever work on the X-Men. I think I'm cool with this. And and I think by 200, Claremont was running out of steam and the book had gotten too big. So he's getting pulled in like 70 different directions. And
They
it
have
just,
the most convoluted. It just,
yeah, that's always my favorite one. Whenever anybody says to me, the Legion is too hard to follow, I just say X-Men. And then
what the,
like,
yeah. And
yeah,
that, and you could just say the last 5 years of X-Men.
yeah.
It just they're on another. I'm reading on the app this new Revelation thing, and it's been okay. Some comics are good, some are bad, and some of the writing's really good. I'm enjoying it, but basically they pull Scott and Hank from the past to inhabit their future bodies because of the way the world's turned out. And when they do it, Scott and Hank are both like, Scott goes, okay, what timeline am I in, and what have we done this time, and why am I here to fix it? It's like, so this has become cliche, Scott.
It's the X-Men. All right. I think we could just keep meandering down these rabbit holes, and we won't. So we're going to wrap it up. We're going to close the mission monitor board. Before we do this, I'll start with Kirby. Where can people find your stuff? What should people be checking out that you're putting out there?
Okay, so if you want to follow me on Blue Sky, I'm on Fearless Reap. I'm currently in the midst of a post-crisis to New 52 Superman read. So you can just kind of follow me along there as I'm just going issue by issue, just getting my kind of, in a lot of cases, reactions. And if you want to listen to me on other podcasts, I'm on Magazines and Monsters with Billy D, where I'm covering issues of Creepy and Eerie and a lot of other Warren Publishing anthology horrors. And of course, you can find me on Stop Let's Team Up, where my main solo show is Zoo Crew Review, where I'm going issue by issue, every issue of Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Crew, and pairing every episode with a classic Looney Tunes short. And then I'm just Opal City Confidential, 4for4, Fantastic Four coverage, then just sometimes whatever Ross and I just want to talk about.
And Ross, where can everybody find you, and what are you putting out into the world these days?
I'm the host of Stop Let's Team Up, and Kirby comes on the ones he said. Right now, Opal City. I'm going to finish talking about the Will Payton Starman, which was a fun read up to a point. And then I got a little rust. But we do the 4for4. I'm also the host of Gallifrey's Most Wanted, where I talk about different things, Doctor Who, every month or so, covering a lot of the big Finish audios with Christopher Eccleston and Jodie Whittaker. They both joined the big Finish world. So since there's no new Who, we'll talk about some fun stuff.
Nice. And Jim, where can everybody find you?
So I have my Legion Reviews website at jimboslegion.blogspot.com, where I had been doing one new comic a week that's somehow Legion related, but I have a whole bunch of stuff queued up actually now that I'm actually actively working on, believe it or not, including a retrospective about the Superman title from around issue 28 through 35, which is where the Legion of Darkseid is featured, because there's a lot of really good, interesting writing in that particular stretch. And funnily enough, I just saw on the DC app that this actually range will be collected for a collection that's going to be released in the summer, around when all the Supergirl stuff hits. So that's going to be coming out. And so I'm going to be doing a bit of a retrospective on all that kind of stuff. Anyway, you can find me personally on Blue Sky at jimbofett.bsky.social, on Reddit at jimbofett87, and on Discord as jimbofett on both the Legion Fan Club Discord as well as the CPOV Discord. How about you, Jeff?
All right. So every week I do a reread of 2 Legion comics. I'm right now deep into Retro Boot, which is alternately interesting and depressing. And you can find those columns at jmlonglivethelegion.blogspot.com. If you want to find me on Blue Sky, I'm at jmckernan.bsky.social. And if you want to find me on Discord or Reddit, my username is Drake Burrows. And Jim, how can everybody find this podcast?
All right. Well, if you want to follow the podcast or get access to the Legion Discord, we are at longlivethelegion.bsky.social, or send us an email and tell us what you think at longlivethelegion2025@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star rating on your podcatcher of choice, or even better, give us 2 5-star ratings. You can also find us on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Facebook, where you can find all of these recordings and more, and hopefully more content in the near future here too. So I guess that will
That
wrap
is
it
the
up
plan.
for now, and we'll let poor old LYLE NORG rest in peace here for a little bit longer. Until we talk to you guys next time, long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.
Long live the Legion.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone.
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Case Aiken.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.